anybody that knows me very well probably knows that I have been a lifelong Atlanta Braves fan. As a child growing up in the 80s, I watched as many games as I could because they were always on TBS almost every night during the season. In fact, I can still tell you the starting lineup for the Braves in those early 80s. Guys like Chris Chambliss on first and Glenn Hubbard at second. Rafael Ramirez was at short, Bob Horner at third, Bruce Benedict behind the plate. You had Claudell Washington in right field, Brett Butler in left field. When I say I was a Braves fan and still am, I have always been a big fan. But without a doubt, my favorite player for the Braves in those days, and my childhood idol of a baseball player, was their center fielder, number 3, Dale Murphy. I loved watching Murph play baseball, as everybody referred to him. He spent 18 years in the major leagues. Twice he was the MVP. He had 7 All-Star games that he appeared in. He was a 5-time Golden Glove Award, 4-time Silver Slugger Award. Twice he led the National League in home runs and RBIs. And for the 10 years between 1981 and 1990, cumulatively, he had more home runs and RBIs than anyone else in baseball. He was one of the best players to play the game during those years. I loved watching him play. Recently, I was reading a Sports Illustrated article, and it was one of those "where are they now" kind of articles. You know, where's Murph now? What's he up to? And it was writing about his life and his family and what he's doing now outside of baseball. But what was interesting as I read the article is that almost none of the article was about all of his accomplishments on the field, of which there are many, and even many more than I mentioned. The majority of the article was spent talking about the kind of person that Dale Murphy was and still is. How he was a family man, just an all-around nice guy that the players loved to be around. He was also known as one of the cleanest guys in baseball. It was known that he didn't drink, he didn't party, he didn't run around with women. In fact, he would only take a picture with a woman if she was not touching him, wouldn't allow them to hug or put their arm around him because he didn't want any even appearance of anything improper towards himself or towards her. He was often known that he would pick up the tab at a restaurant when his team was out of town just because he was a nice guy. And as you read this article, the author said that he believed that part of the reason he was such a great player on the field was because of who he was off the field. And then he said this: Dale Murphy was just an all-around good, moral guy. We're in this study on the BeAttitudes, and we're more than halfway through these 8 statements that Jesus makes about the Christian life and the blessings of being a part of the kingdom of heaven. And today we come to that 6th beatitude that Jesus mentions, and it's this: that blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. What does it mean to be pure in heart, and that the pure in heart see God? If I were to ask you to describe to me a person that you see as a pure person, someone who is pure of heart, what does that morally upright person look like? Probably you would describe somebody like I just described Dale Murphy, someone who's a good person, an upstanding person that tries to make the right decisions, that goes to great lengths to be a person of integrity and character and good morality. They have a good moral compass. They're kind and compassionate. Maybe that's how you would define someone who is pure of heart. And while that certainly is a great deal of what being pure of heart is, when Jesus talked about this idea of purity and being pure of heart, there was actually something that he was addressing that's before all of those outward signs. Something that is even more important than the actions that we do outwardly. He talked a great deal about what was happening inwardly. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus is having a discussion with some Pharisees and scribes who were upset at Jesus because his disciples had this habit of eating their food without washing their hands. Now, that might sound kind of silly to have a big disagreement about. You know, maybe not so much if you're a mom and always trying to get your child to wash their hands. But in Jesus' day, in that culture, in the Jewish culture, there were tremendous ceremonial religious implications of eating food without washing your hands, because the belief was that you needed to be morally clean and spiritually clean, and to be clean, you could not defile yourself in any way. And so one of the most basic ways you cleaned yourself was to wash your hands before you ate. And so there's this big debate between Jesus and the Pharisees and the scribes about what all that meant. And in Matthew chapter 15, here's what Jesus says in response to their complaints about the disciples not washing their hands. He says this, "What comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and that is what defiles a person. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone." In other words, Jesus is making a clear delineation here between what it means to be truly pure. It's not just to be clean outwardly or look or appear as though you're upright, but to truly be that way on the inside, that your heart is made pure, because what comes out of your mouth, Jesus says, is actually just a result of what is in your heart. A few chapters later, he's carrying this idea on, speaking to his Pharisees about those, or speaking to his disciples about those same Pharisees and scribes. And in Matthew 23, here's what he says to the disciples about the Pharisees, about the scribes. He says, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so do and observe whatever they tell you, but do not do the works that they do. For they tie heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others." And then he launches into this really harsh commentary and message to the scribes and to the Pharisees about the way that they are treating other people. It's called the 7 woes to the Pharisees. He says things like, "Woe to you, Pharisees, you hypocrites. You'll actually travel across land and sea to make a single convert, and the moment you do, you turn him into twice as much a child of hell as yourself." He uses one analogy when he says, "Woe to you, because you have these cups that look so clean on the outside, but inside they're just full of greed and self-indulgence. You're blind to your own sin inwardly. Woe to you, Pharisees, you hypocrites." He says, "You're like whitewashed tombs that are beautiful on the outside, but inwardly you're full of just death." In other words, what Jesus was saying very clearly is that to be pure in heart is more than just being a nice guy. It's more than just being a good guy. It's more than just being morally upright and making good decisions. That to actually be morally upright requires you being pure of heart. That God would make clean and new what is inside of you. And as a result of that, you would act differently. You would act with purity because God has made you pure. Because when God purifies your heart, a few things happen. You're able to see God for who He truly is. You're able to enter the presence of God. You're able to witness and experience the glory of God in a way you never were before. And that causes you to want to pursue moral uprightness and integrity and purity. And so as you discuss this idea among your group, as we've done each week, we've provided some scriptures and some questions to kind of spur discussion. But here's what we hope you understand and the conclusion you come to. That when Jesus says that blessed are the pure in heart, that it's not just about doing the right things and saying the right things and acting the right way. That it actually begins with Jesus purifying who you are on the inside, making you new so that you can pursue the glory of God in a way you never did before. That you can see the goodness of God as something so valuable that you're willing to be pure and full of integrity, kindness, and uprightness because of who God is, because of the way that you've understood who God is. Being pure of heart is not the result of being morally upright, but being morally upright is the result of Jesus making you pure of heart. It's a response to what God has changed inside of you. So talk about that amongst your group. What does it mean to be pure in heart? Because Jesus promised that those who are pure in heart will see God.